What's up, everybody? It is Jordan here from Hive Mind Hobbies. The Tyranid Codex is host of, in my opinion, some of the coolest models and units in the entire Warhammer 40k universe. And a lot of them have very good competitive rules, and you can make an argument for including them into any army list or detachment, whatever, just to have a good game or even a competitive one. We've got some good models. However, there's one model, there's one unit that is universally just decided that it will not make the tabletop no matter what, because the rules are so bad and because it's got really big arms. In this video, I'm going to talk about exactly how I would fix our beloved Toxicrene. So what's the problem with the Toxicrene, and why exactly is it not being seen on the table? And I don't know, nobody's really excited about it. No, in my opinion, in 10th edition, it just hasn't been used. The main thing is the tentacles, and everyone is going to agree that it's the tentacles. Now, in Warhammer 40k, you can draw a line of sight most of the time from parts of your models to your opponent's models, but that also goes, the other way. Your opponent, if it sees any part of a crazy tentacle sticking out from behind cover or around a ruin, it's going to be able to shoot at your crazy tentacly space bug monstrosity thing. If you can't hide its many tentacles, which I think it has like 10 of them, behind a ruin perfectly, then it gets shot and then it probably dies. And we'll take a look at its stats in a moment just to prove to you that it is probably going to die. In addition, the tentacles are going to prevent it from moving, or rather staying in a spot easily. They're too big. They don't fit. A lot of Games Workshop tables, which is what I normally play on because I'm in the United States, there's a lot of alleyways and nooks and crannies that a Toxicrene is just not really going to be able to fit expertly through those pathways because of its tentacles. And even if you are able to get it to fit, it's going to take up probably close to twice its own space lengthwise because of how far the tentacles stick out. So not only is it hard to fit it somewhere in order for it to not get immediately shot off the board, but you're taking up really, really valuable real estate space for your Toxicrene. You're not going to be able to fit out some of your monsters or some of your other units because the tentacles are reaching out and covering more of the board than you would like. In addition, if that was it, right? If the model was just hard to navigate around the board and it was hard to fit places, that would be one thing. The rules are also like really bad. And in my opinion, they're some of the worst rules that we have access to in our codex. The stats of the Toxicrene, and looking at the stats, I had to remind myself exactly what the stats were as I was making this video. And I was just, again, astounded by how bad the stats are. If we take a look at the defensive stats first, it's toughness 11, 3-up save with 14 wounds. Okay, toughness 11 is not bad. It's really not terrible. That means he's as tough as a big knight now in these days. But the main problem, the huge issue, is with a 3-up save. Now, you can argue that if you tuck the tentacles around a building or something, which you absolutely can anytime you move this thing because the tentacles are huge, you can get cover, right? But a 3-up save is only going to give you so much. And with 14 wounds, it's not a vast amount of wounds. There's going to be a lot of armies that can easily take out a Toxicrene in one activation without really even questioning what they're doing, right? That's just kind of what happens. Now, if we look at its range profile, it's a very interesting range profile. It has a 9-inch range, which is an interesting range, right? 2d6 shots, not blast. I think this is to simulate all the tentacles shooting out, grabbing, and then doing a mild amount of damage. Hits on 3s. It's strength 6, AP 1, 2 damage, and anti-infantry 2 up. And if you look at its melee profile, it's relatively the same. 12 attacks this time, hitting on 3s, of course, strength 6, AP 1, 2 damage, and then again anti-infantry 2 up. Now, those are okay profiles. The ranged one, 9 inches, is not really going to get you anything. In fact, you can't even bring it in from deep strike and shoot at something. Not that you would really want to, but just worth noting that you can, right? And then its melee profile is falling into the Tyranid trap of always, -1 AP or -2 AP, and that is it. Anti-infantry 2 up is okay. It's not like Tyranids aren't super excited about another unit that can kill infantry really well. I feel like most of our units do that already, and it's not certainly a problem that we have. In addition, it has an ability on a 3 up to prevent things from falling back because the tentacles are entangling. And then at the end of the movement phase, if you're within 6 inches of enemy units, then you can do mortal wounds. Some pretty lackluster rules, if you ask. Continuing on as to why I think this unit really is not something to shake a stick at. It's 150 points for no invulnerable save. That means there's a lot of weapons out there in the 40k universe that is just going to very easily be able to put you on a 6 for your armor saves, or in some cases with some spooky knights out there, AP4 is just going to cook a Toxicrene incredibly quickly, and cooked Toxicrene does not sound appetizing for your dinner nor for your army list. And I spoke on this already, but it doesn't kill anything Tyranids aren't good at killing, right? Like, we have so many units that are very good at killing infantry and even elite infantry, but the fact that this thing has anti-infantry 2 up doesn't really help our army in the slightest. In addition, the mortal wound bomb is very swingy, having to roll even a 2 up for 1 mortal, and then maybe a D3, and then maybe D6 mortal wounds if you roll a little bit higher. It's not the best. Like, if you roll a 1, then your thing doesn't happen at all. And then in fact, 6 inches is very, very close to the Toxicrene. This is not a melee monster. This is not a monster in any regard, but having to be that close to maybe proccing multiple mortal wounds is not really what you want. And my last point on this slide is, of course, it's so slow. And the fact that all of its abilities, you have to be very close. You have to be at least 9 inches to do its ranged weapon, and you have to be 6 inches to do its mortal wound thing. And it only moving 8 inches and being hampered by its large tentacles and being on a big base, it's going to be very hard to get the Toxicrene into anywhere that is important or significant on the table. Here's what I would do. First thing we got to change is the defensive profile. We need to give this guy defensive buffs so that his fantastic mustache can live to see another day or even another battle round. First up, automatic slam. It has to have a 5-up invulnerable save. If it had a 5-up invulnerable save, I think you can argue that its defensive profile is way better. Then you're not super scared of Meltas. You're mildly scared of Meltas, but you still have a chance. Right? There's still a way for your Toxicrene to live through a knight looking at it, or I don't know, some disgusting Inferno pistol or something. In addition, it gives off cover and stealth to all units within 6 inches. I think this thing is like almost like a ginormous Venomthrope, right? It has a bunch of toxic spores that it spits out, and it has like a bunch of gross clouds that surround it. And at least I think in any art that I've ever seen with the Toxicrene, it's stinky. Right? It's got these spores, got these clouds. So give him some clouds, give him some spores within the game. I think cover and stealth will be perfectly fine. It also fits with the Venomthrope. It's like a monster version of the Venomthrope. So give it monster version rules of the Venomthrope. And then the falling back rule, if I were to redesign it, which I don't know, maybe it's a good thing I'm not redesigning it. Maybe this is going to be too strong. But I would just change the falling back is to an automatic desperate escape. Maybe that's too strong. It would definitely be better, right? But this rule, if we're given cover and stealth and everything, I feel like honestly you could probably just do away with the falling back thing. I think it's trying to lean too much into the grabbing tentacles. Doesn't need it. Here are the offensive buffs that I would do. I'm not changing so much the profiles, but I'm doing a couple of things. The first one is just add devastating wounds to ranged and melee attacks. Just keep, it's a weird profile, but if you just keep it the same, then you can make an argument that the Toxicrene is a better infantry killer than a lot of the other units that we have in our codex, just because it's going to give dev wounds on 2-ups. Again, maybe that's too strong. Maybe we change it to anti-infantry 3-ups, and then you have dev wounds off of that. But I think that would be a pretty cool combo. I think that would be pretty interesting, and then I think people would be actually pretty scared of the Toxicrene. In addition, I think mortals within 9 at the end of the movement, just extending that a little bit more, and then changing the dice roll on the mortals. Like if you roll a 1, they automatically get 1 mortal. If you roll a 2 through 5, they get D3 mortals, and then if you roll a 6, get D3 plus 3 mortals. I am not a fan of the D6 mortals thing, because a lot of times, I'm not a mathematician, but isn't there a 50% chance that you could just get as low as a D3, right? So there's no actual huge, amazing benefit to rolling a 6. But if you roll a 6 and it's D3 plus 3, then you automatically are rolling higher than a D3. And you're rewarded for that. I feel like playing Warhammer, if you roll a 6, you should be rewarded for it. So that's what I would do. And then here's my wild take, right? Last bullet point. If the tentacles are going to be so much of a detriment to the way it's going to be able to be seen, the way it's going to be able to be hidden, then why don't we also make it a little bit of an offensive buff and make the tentacles count for engagement range? Again, really not sure how that would work. And in my opinion, it's probably not going to work, but but it could be interesting, right? Like, what if you scoop a bunch of units into engagement range with how big its arms are in just one go? It could be fun. My favorite part of any video is asking you what you think. What would you put, in the comments below? Do you disagree or agree with me? But what would you do about the tentacles? Do you agree with the engagement range thing? Do you think it could be an interesting idea to explore? What else would you change about his profile? Do you agree with any of the defensive or offensive buffs that I've put into place? There's a rumor going around, or maybe there's a wish going around for 11th edition that you are no longer judging line of sight from the weapons or limbs that are hanging off a model, but you're judging line of sight specifically from a model's base to base. In that case, there's actually a pretty good chance that the Toxicrene might be way better than it is now, because the tentacles will not be a factor anymore. So maybe there's a chance that in 11th edition, that's the way they roll with it, and the Toxicrene maybe seems some table play. Last but certainly not least, have you played with it before? Have you put the Toxicrene on the table? Has it been successful, or has it died immediately and done nothing but tickle your opponent? Let me know in the comments below. All right, everybody, that is it for this mildly goofy, shorter video about our beautiful calamari cousin, the Toxicrene. Again, let me know in the comments below what you would do. I'm interested to see what the community thinks about the Toxicrene. Thank you again for watching. Thank you so much for supporting, and have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.